friends. Today I'm going to talk about, is Japan expensive? A lot of people think Japan is expensive, and they are right in some circumstances, but not really. So Japan, from my perspective, which I think it's definitely relative whether or not Japan is expensive, because when you're coming from maybe like a smaller town USA, or you're coming from another country that really isn't expensive, Japan might seem like it is expensive. That seems like it was not well said. But me, living in a big city in the US, when I go to Japan, I think that it is comparable or less expensive. I think that if you live in Los Angeles, or you live in New York or San Francisco, Chicago, some of the bigger cities in the US, you will also probably experience the same thing, that Japan is pretty affordable. And that's going to be in terms of food, lodging, and then transportation. So for food, Japan is so much less expensive than Los Angeles or the US. If you go to fast food in the US, it's going to be at least $8 for one person, if not more. I mean, there was a time that like McDonald's, I think you could get stuff for really cheap, but now if you get a meal, it's gonna be like $8-9. So there's that. In Japan, it's like $4 to $5 for one person. It's amazing. And you get quality food, and you get a lot of food. Like, fast food in Japan doesn't necessarily mean crap food. It just means that it's fast and convenient. It smells like French fries. I can't really tell. French fries. And then going to restaurants, we went to, I think I mentioned this in my food experience for Japan. We went to udon restaurants and we went to sushi restaurants. We never came out with a bill more than $20, except for the one steakhouse that we went to. It was more expensive, but it was also steak, and we had like Wagyu and things like that that are more pricey because of their quality. And you could go to like an omakase sushi restaurant, and that could run you about $300, and that's pretty comparable to LA prices. But you don't have to eat that kind of sushi, because all sushi in Japan is good for the most part. The only exceptions to those rules are going to be things like fruit. Fruit is pretty expensive depending on which kind of fruit you get. Like, strawberries are going to be expensive, melons are really expensive, oranges I believe are also pretty expensive, but things like bananas, I got a pack of bananas while we were staying there, so I had something for breakfast and it was like $2 for a bunch. It might not be as cheap as the US, but it's not expensive. Like, it wasn't $40 for a bunch of bananas. The same goes for vegetables as well. Like, there are some vegetables that are going to be a little bit more expensive than what you might think in the US, and that's just based on what they're able to get. They are an island, so a lot of things are imported. But I think for the most part, vegetables are pretty, like, you can get a lot of stuff for real cheap. So when we were touring as tourists, because we don't live there yet, we got groceries for our Airbnb, and we didn't spend that much money on food, and we ate a lot of food. I mean, that's why we traveled. So I wouldn't worry about that. And then equally, if you're living there, again, getting groceries, it's not a lot. Even a lot of other YouTubers that I watch who vlog about Japan and actually live there, it seems like they're going out to eat a lot more often than they're cooking it at home. And it also seems like it's quite affordable, because most of those people are English language teachers and they get paid pretty well, but not like pretty well. You know, like, they make enough to make their rent and then to pay for going out to eat all the time. So that's pretty good. So then if we are going to talk about housing and whether or not you are a tourist or living there, it's going to depend. But like I said before, in like every other video that we talk about traveling there, I always do Airbnbs because I feel like they are so affordable. And part of the reason is because renting in Japan is pretty cheap. We actually got a realtor because we were considering buying property in Japan, which as a foreigner, you can buy property in Japan. Living there and getting a job there is a different story. So we looked around in a bunch of different places to purchase if we were pretty close to the heart of Tokyo, or, I mean, Tokyo is huge. So if it like was in the city limits of Tokyo or in the Tokyo district prefecture. It's kind of confusing. But you're going to be purchasing something between 60,000 to all the way up to like 400,000, but that's only thousands. The most expensive that we looked at was, I think, 350,000, and that was a really nice modern apartment with multiple rooms, had full kitchen, had a really nice bathroom, a good living area, and I think 2 bedrooms, if I'm not mistaken. And that's purchasing that, and that would be in a really nice building. They would have all those fancy amenities. And then we looked at some that were tiny, and they were probably the size of our kitchen and dining area combined, and that was the entire apartment. And those ran between $30,000 and $60,000 to purchase. But that's purchasing. And then renting, if you rented those places, it's between $400 a month to like $1,200 a month would probably be those really nice ones. And that's insane. And if you watch some of the other YouTubers that actually do apartment tours, they'll tell you about how much they pay, and they'll tell you around about where they live. Those people, a lot of them, like Rachel and June, I'm sure everybody knows who they are. If you are a fan of Japanese vloggers who are gaijins, they said that they recently got an apartment for $600 a month. Like, there's a lot of money down that you have to do initially, but then it's only $600 a month for a really nice apartment. That's insane. The apartment that they got in Los Angeles would probably be $2,200 a month, and that's a lot different than $600 a month. With that contrast, if you're going to be purchasing a home like in Los Angeles where I live, you would have to, you just couldn't do that. Los Angeles, it's at least $1 million. And then if you're going to purchase a condo, it's the cheapest in my area for like a tiny little shack that's probably the same size as my apartment right now is going to be about $350,000. And then renting right now, the area that I live in, I think I've mentioned this in other videos, but the area that I live in is rent control, which thank goodness for that, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to afford to live in Los Angeles, basically, because our apartment right now at the going rate is going to be between $1,800 to $2,000 a month, and that's too much for us. There are other places in the United States that you can purchase homes for like $120,000. I don't know if there's places that are less, but if you are living in a place like Tokyo or even outside of Tokyo and you're able to purchase something that's amazing for $120,000, I mean, that's insane. And that brings me to the transportation, because it's so easy to get into the city of Tokyo with their awesome transportation. And now, like I said too in some of the other videos about transportation and whatnot, it might be a little more expensive than, say, New York for transportation, but it's really quite affordable. And then as a tourist too, if you were going to drive in Tokyo, like you were gonna rent a car, you need to make sure that you have an international driving permit before you go to Tokyo, because they require that, because not everybody can drive in Tokyo. And that would run you about $75 to $150. Roughly. If you are a tourist, or I guess if you're living there too, you might take a taxi. And taxis, we took one once, and as far as I remember, it wasn't that expensive, but it's not something that you really need to take. Again, their public transportation is outstanding. Some other things, I watched some other YouTubers who do live in Japan, and they were talking about other costs. As far as like health insurance, a couple of people broke it down, and basically what it seems like it comes out to about $35 a month. That's insane. And you have to get insurance there. And from what I can tell, the medical arena there is pretty good. You're gonna get pretty decent healthcare, whereas in the United States, you can go to a clinic and it could be the jankiest thing that you've ever been to. It depends on your town and your area. I'm strictly speaking of Los Angeles or bigger cities. It can be really uncomfortable to go to the doctor. And right now, obviously, we have to have insurance. There's a lot of stuff going on and changes, but when I looked into insurance, it was about $200 a month for me, and that's like not through work. Japanese one, not through work, is still like $35, I believe. And then going to like a clinic here, it's $99, I believe, at the cheapest. And that's just to get a checkup, basic blood work done, and that's it. That's not prescription or anything else like that. I was watching NHK, as I often do, and they were talking about they have in some shopping malls, they'll set up booths for $5. You can get your blood checked, you can get your basic vitals checked, like where they listen to your heart and they listen to your breathing and all that stuff, for $5. That's insane. That's so smart. So they're keeping their population really healthy, which is nice. Some other things that are more expensive, which is really interesting, are movie theaters. I believe it is about $20 to go see a movie in Japan. That can happen in the United States, especially in Los Angeles. Like if you go to like one of the ArcLights or something like that, that's going to be about $20 for an evening show. But the one that we go to right now, if we go to a matinee, it's only $7, and then it's I think think it's like $14 to go to an evening show. So that's not as expensive. It's still really expensive, but it's a lot more to go see movies in Japan. They're not as much of a movie culture as we are in the US, so that could be why. And it's also probably harder for them to get movies than it is in Hollywood. Like, we can get Transformers because Michael Bay lives down the road from us, so there's that. But overall, I honestly think that, especially coming from a big city in America, Japan is quite inexpensive in comparison, and the quality of the goods that you're getting over there is really good in most cases. Yeah, I'm gonna say 90% of everything that you get is going to be better quality or better craftsmanship in Japan, and it's going to be cheaper. My statistic on that was pulled right out of you-know-where, so I don't know how accurate that is, but from my experience, it's definitely better quality for less money. So I hope that this video is pretty informative. Going as a tourist or even moving to Japan, I really think that overall Japan is quite inexpensive. And I hope you liked my video, so if you did, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe because I do have more videos which I'll link around. And don't forget to follow me on the social media, fun stuff. I will see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.